Good afternoon, year six. Today in our geography lesson, we're thinking to continue our understanding of biomes and ecosystems. And over the next few weeks, we'll look at some specific examples, but today we're just going to think more broadly about the concept. To be successful today, we need to identify what ecosystems are and to compare that to biomes. We need to think about what your own biome would look like as a way of contextualizing what a biome is. And we then need to think about how we'd understand that in some specific examples. First thing we're going to do is we're going to revisit some basic animal terminology, just so we're clear as we look forward through the next few weeks about the different terminology given as broad measures or broad groupings for different animals. So we've got the idea of herbivores, so animals which don't eat meat, carnivores, animals which solely eat meat, and omnivores, animals which eat a mixed diet of both meat and vegetation. I'd like us to think, as the first task, this is something for you to do on your pack today, how you'd sort some different animals within this Venn diagram. So carnivores on the left, herbivores on the right, and omnivores in the middle. So if we think about a badger, a badger, it eats worms and insects. Okay, so therefore it could be a carnivore. However, the fact that it eats fruit and fungi makes it an omnivore because it eats that mix of meat and vegetation and the microorganisms. Then a carnivore would be something such as a cheetah, which eats giraffes, zebras, hares, and birds. Now, I know this is quite a basic thing for us to do, but I think it's quite useful to do just so that then we can really clarify in our head the idea of those three words: herbivores, omnivores, carnivores. Okay, and once we've got that work done, hopefully we'll have some examples of more beings that we can include in work, and we can include in our understanding of the ecosystems in the future weeks. Two new pieces of language, though, that we're looking at today: abiotic and biotic. Okay, now biotic is something that's alive. Okay, so something that's alive would mean anything such as plants, animals, and all other organisms. So we've looked in our science this week at microorganisms. So anything which is living is biotic. Anything which is not living is abiotic. I'm not sure how to pronounce that quite. Okay, but that means things such as rocks. More broadly, abstract concepts such as temperature, humidity. So any of those issues are things which are abiotic. What I'd like you to do is have a think within this. Can you think of something else that's biotic? So as well as plants and animals, can you think of specific examples? Which plants, which animals, which other organisms have we looked at in science this week? For the abiotic ones, what else, as well as rocks and temperature, is not alive? What else could you say that's not alive but still affects the climate or still affects the experience of living within these ecosystems and more broadly these biomes? Right, guys. Just thinking that I feel like we've got a little bit confused about the concept of ecosystems and biomes. So I thought what I'd do is tailor today's lesson specifically to distinguishing between the two. Now, if I was really lucky, this would be my house. And if this were my house, this would be my biome. It's the broad area in which I live. Okay, it's the broad area in which I exist. The temperature, so the climate, should I say, is similar throughout certain long periods of time. It doesn't vary from day to day. My biome. Okay. Now, within my biome, there are two pieces of prey, okay, or two things which could be consumed. There's a mouse and there's a Mars bat. It's not real. It's just to illustrate a point. Now, there's two preys. There's this beast and there's this other beast. Okay, there's Theo the beast and this scary old other beast. Okay, now the blue team, the blue ecosystem, is not linked to the red ecosystem. Nothing I eat interacts with anything that Theo eats. Theo doesn't try and eat my mouse now. Okay, and that's the idea of an ecosystem. Then it's separate within the same biome. Okay, so we've got two ecosystems there within the same biome. It's a bit of a silly example. It's just to make the point where they sit within each other. Every part of an ecosystem links together. We've talked about in the past in science about food webs and food maps, okay? And this similar concept with an ecosystem, but there's almost more and more strings that go off. It's like Queen Victoria's family tree almost, okay? If that abiotic temperature changes, that will affect which biotic life can flourish. So which plants can flourish, and therefore which other organisms can consume or live alongside those plants. Because those animals depend on that plant life, then they could perish, they could die unless they get the access to the food that they need. So with perish, then perish is a really useful. I say they could perish, they could die, they could try and move, and then they could be at risk of other predators, or they could lose their shelter. If, for example, suddenly trees stop growing leaves, then would there be sufficient shelter to protect them from water? Would there be sufficient shelter to protect them from the wind? Would there be sufficient shelter to stop other prey coming and attacking them? However, they could perish because they just can't eat. And if they perish, it means to die, to die suddenly. Okay, we don't perish over many, many years. We tend to perish quickly, suddenly. Okay. So perish is a word which then we might have seen imperishable. Sometimes things in the fridge that are there because they're perishable. That means they can go off quickly. So the reason, for example, we put milk in the fridge is because milk can turn quickly. The bacteria within milk can change it from being healthy for us to consume to making us unwell quite quickly. It can perish quite quickly. Stemmed from the word perire, which is a Latin word to be lost. Okay, so to be lost means to go, to die. Okay, and that's what happens if something perishes. This elephant, I believe, has perished. So we see it's no longer alive. It's died quickly. It's not died over a gradual period of time. We assume it's either been hurt by a poacher or it maybe has had an accident. Synonyms, then, words which mean the same as perish, expire, or to come, so they mean the same. Then antonyms, ones of the opposite, are to live, to thrive. And to use it, what I'd like you to do is try and think of your own use of the word perish in a sentence. Could you try and think about some words, some ways of using it for poetry, maybe, like Wilfred Owen and like John McCrae have done, where they try and demonstrate what happened to soldiers in the Somme and in other battles within World War One. Okay. Ecosystems that could be very large, very small. For example, tide pools are really small. If you've ever been to the seaside and noticed these little pools of water, they will only emerge on the day or on a few days and last for not too long. Because what happens when the tide comes in and covers up these pools, when it goes out, the water stays. If it's a hot day, the water might evaporate. But if it's not a super hot day, the water may stay in these pools, and little ecosystems emerge there. So here's an example of one of these tide pools. Seaweed growing through photosynthesis. That's then consumed by something such as an abalone, which could eat it, a herbivore. And then carnivores, such as those orange sea stars, could eat other animals within the pool that are consuming that are consuming the seaweed. Okay, so there's a whole little ecosystem which has happened within this tide pool. That isn't a biome, though. A biome would be a much broader area where the weather and the plantation and the biotic life is similar. The whole surface of the Earth is always connected ecosystems, and ecosystems are often connected in a larger biome. So it's the idea of the house being the biome and the ecosystems sitting within the biome. Okay, so again, that idea of my house being containing at least two ecosystems. Large sections of biomes then are these sections of land, sea, or atmosphere. Okay, so generally on the types of plants or animals that live in them, or the type of climate that exists there. Okay, so in each forest or each pond or wherever, there's many different ecosystems. Okay, so for example, this is a bit of a rainforest, and within this rainforest, if we were looking down on it, it looked like one section, but if we look across at it, can see it's in 4 or 5 different sections: the forest floor, the understory, the canopy, and the emergent layer. Now, in the emergent layer, there'll be birds and bats. In the canopy, there'll be monkeys. There's different animals there, so they need different things to consume to thrive. In the understory, there's snakes and frogs, and then in the forest floor, there's animals such as jaguars that are looking around on the floor for what prey they can attack. Now, the emergent layer has animals such as birds that wouldn't be able to flourish on the forest floor. The forest floor has animals such as jaguar who wouldn't be able to fly. So the ecosystem within those different areas of the same biome is very different. For example, biome of Sahara Desert, lots of ecosystems. Arid, so it's really dry, and the hot weather is something else which characterizes that biome. Within the Sahara, there's more than one ecosystem. Then there's these oasis ecosystems, so areas where a small plot of water has precipitated lots of growth of palm trees and other kind of vegetation within the desert. There's these dune ecosystems where hilly elements to the desert have then allowed certain biotic plants to grow, but which have really strong roots, which allow them to stay within the windy area they live. And then there's also a marine environment within the Sahara Desert. It's not something you'd normally think of, but if you think of where the Sahara Desert is in the north of Africa, And towards the northwest of Africa, the point where the yellow box is now, you can see that the Sahara Desert interacts with the Atlantic Ocean. At that point, there's fogs on the northwest African coast. So there's suddenly then quite a different set of ecosystems that are all part of that same biome of the Sahara Desert. Another example, of how biomes are different with the type of ecosystems is that just because you're called desert, like the Sahara and the Gobi Desert, doesn't mean every desert's the same. So the Gobi Desert has many differences. What can you spot there compared to the Sahara Desert? You can still see sand, can't you? But what's the sand covered with? Yeah, snow. It's a colder desert. And at the back of the picture, you can see the image of the mountains because most of the Gobi Desert is made up of a mixture of sand and rock. Okay, lots of snow. So the type of animal, type of other biotic life which could flourish there is different to that which would flourish in the Sahara Desert. And there's lots and lots of bare rock, and the type of biotic life that can flourish in bare rock is very different to that which, even in the oasis or in the dune ecosystem, can allow itself to connect to that. Some animals can flourish there, but they can only flourish on the types of grass which grow there, and therefore the type of animal that can live there is very different to the ones which could live in the Sahara Desert. So gazelles can, but not many others. Now, your jobs today, then, 2 or 3 jobs. We've said about using the word perish in some sentences. I've also asked you to have a look at that sorting diagram for those herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores. I'd like you then to think about your own biome. Okay, so I did earlier on with my biome, and in that biome was my house. Okay, think about your biome, and it's a house. What different ecosystems are there within your house? Are there siblings that consume things that you don't consume? Are there pets that consume things that you don't consume? Are there also parents or siblings that consume things you do consume? So, can you group some ecosystems together within your home just to get the idea that ecosystems are distinct from biomes but are also contained within them? So, they're a different concept, but they're not the same. Okay, so they're co-located. So, just go over that again. So, your first task, I'm just going back, will be the work relating to. I'm just going back. Sorry, guys. The work relating to the um, herbivores and omnivores. For the sorting activity, just to reacquaint yourself with those language points. You're then going to try and use the word perish as many times as possible in different sentences. I really would give it some thought in trying to use that word perish, that die suddenly word, as a synonym, as a word to use in your poetry. So start trying to think of some of those sentences that you might use on the back of Wilfred Owen and John McCrae's work. Use that. And then finally, think about your own biome, your house, or maybe you're going to think more specifically about the area in which you live, the world in which you live now. So Britain as your biome. What would you perceive as the different ecosystems that you're part of or that are around you within your biome? Okay, as I said, it's a bit of a silly example, but I thought of the idea of my house, and then I've got my own ecosystem, which is me consuming my chocolate, and my pet has its own ecosystem, which is it's consuming its own food. So, can you think of the different ecosystems within your biome? Thanks very much for your attention today, guys. Looking forward to seeing those completed biomes, and we'll carry on with our more specific looking, a more in depth looking at different biomes next week. See you soon, guys. Bye.